welcome back to my podcast. My name is Britt. I am a menstrual cycle coach and educator. And today I'm actually doing a bit of an impromptu episode. I haven't recorded a podcast episode for a really flippin' long time, but I feel really inspired to bring this to women. And a lot of what I get asked specifically, which I love, is about how to train in alignment with the menstrual cycle. I'm very passionate about this. And for those that are new to my space or have not any clue, sorry, who I am, my background is within the fitness industry. I also grew up dancing. I worked in the industry for a little while as well. So I've always been an active being. So my passion really lies with not only women's health, but really helping women understand the intricacies of their body, the menstrual cycle, and how we can best support that. So I worked as a fitness trainer or a personal trainer for, I want to say 5 years. I was within the industry, just heavily personally training. And then I started my own business. I would train women from my home gym. And I recognized that, of course, a lot of my clients were women and, of course, mums, because I myself became a mum. And what I realized within that time was, what the actual fuck? Like, I've done this Cert 3 and 4 in fitness. I actually know little to fuck all about like women's health and how to train a woman pre and postnatally. I kind of just like had to trial and error it in my own journey because I really didn't understand it. I didn't understand how it would impact me, how sleep deprivation plays such a huge role, how, training alters the taste of the milk that you're producing for baby, the calories, like all of the things, right? Like I just really was like, what the hell? So it sort of sent me down this road, so to speak, or this path of like really delving deep into women's health and better understanding how I could not only support myself, and that's ultimately how the journey begun, was like, well, I need to know this shit for myself. But then the passion of going, this is so crazy that this is not common knowledge for women. And honestly, it made me angry, to be fair. Like I was really angry and still sometimes get really angry about the lack of education, the lack of understanding that is women's health, and what women are and are not taught about their own physiology and bodies. And I think, without going off on a tangent, there's a lot of reasons for that, but I will not delve into that during this episode. This episode is more about more study that I have come to find. And this is mostly from working and coaching a high-level, beautiful athlete for the last 3 to 4 months. So in my natural inquisitive nature and working with her and finding out more about her sport and how it runs and how it operates and her training and all of the things, I started to go like, okay, this is what makes sense to me in terms of like putting my knowledge together, but like what else is out there that kind of supports what the hell I'm actually saying? Like, has science even discovered this? Has science even looked into this? And lo and behold, to what I found was very interesting. And I really wanted to bring it to the space. So without further ado, today I kind of want to dive into fat loss for women, how this looks with the menstrual cycle, how we can support this, because, a lot of what we see in the online space is just like, oh, fat loss is easy and you just need to be in a calorie deficit and you just need to move your body more. And by no means am I saying that that is not effective or that that is not an adequate way to lose weight. However, what we are trying to focus on, or what I am trying to bring, is sustainability, longevity, how this is going to impact the reproductive system, how it's going to affect your hormones by being in these restrictive calorie deficits. Also understanding that, during certain phases of the cycle, your body actually requires more fuel. Okay. And the way I like to explain it is like, obviously you wouldn't put diesel fuel in an unleaded car because it would break the fuck down. Right. So it's the same thing with your body, but you also wouldn't continue to drive your car, right, on near empty and only just continue to top it up every now and again. You're eventually going to have to fill the fucking fuel tank if you want to go the distance, right? Like, how annoying would that be if you were going on a road trip? I just want to use this. Very much love using analogies when I teach and when I'm like in this educational mode. But how crazy would it be? And I just want you to think about it like this. If you were planning a long ass road trip, right? And then you're like, you know what? I'm on empty, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to fill the tank okay, hypothetically speaking, let's just say every 50 kilometers, you're stopping at a fuel station, topping up. Say you put like the tiniest little bit that only just fills the gauge up, like the tiniest amount. And then you drive another 50 Ks if it even gets you that far, and you stop again and you top it up. It's like, what the fuck are you doing? Just fill the fucking tank. Fill the fucking tank and then use the fuel in the tank. You know what I'm saying? So that's kind of what we're going to dive into, right? Because I really need women to understand that when you have fitness influencers in the online space that are telling you you are lazy, you are not doing it properly, you need to restrict your eating, you can eat a fucking chocolate bar if it fits into your macros. No, Cleo. Okay? So what I've kind of been delving into as well is in women that are high level athletes, but also potentially just really active women. And this actually can show up even if you're not a highly active woman, right? Undereating is quite common for women, right? Because we have these bullshit misconceptions that we've been taught about our bodies, about how to fuel our bodies, that if we eat less and move more, like we're going to lose all this weight, when really we're fucking up our hormones. And this is not what they encapsulate in their 7-second reel of like, just eat less and move more, right? It is so much more nuanced than that. There is so much more supportive evidence out there now to show how this impacts women long term when they're not fueling their bodies correctly. Okay, how this impacts not only the endocrine system, which is directly connected to your reproductive health, how it affects your hormone regulation, hormone production, all of the things, libido, so let's dive in. So where I want to begin, and this is just to summarize the findings on what is known as REDS. So what is REDS first and foremost? Okay. REDS is the relative energy deficiency in sport. So what this is referring to is basically women that are high-level athletes or very athletic women, and they're not fueling correctly. They're either on really restrictive low-caloric intake diets that really don't make sense with the level of output that they are, having to perform and do and all of the things. And a lot of these I want to say sporting industries, or what's the right word for that? I don't think it would be industries, but like in that realm, okay, of women's sport, this is not factored in what fucking soever. I feel like it could be more now, given that these studies are coming to light. But I don't know a lot of coaches or fitness coaches or high level athlete coaches that are male fully understand the female physiology, because for the longest time they've studied majority of things on men and just simply applied them to women without any real evidence about how it's going to affect our physiology. And again, this is not to say we're not capable, right? There are some incredibly powerful, fit, strong women out there, but what we haven't looked at is the long-term implications to their menstrual health, their fertility, and also their overall health and well-being long term. Okay, that's great to be at your absolute peak, but then what happens after that? And we see this a lot in bodybuilding competitions and that whole industry as well. And it's actually very unhealthy. It's just because you have a physique on you, that does not equate necessarily to optimal health. It really doesn't. So again, something to know. Just like also something to know before I dive deeper into REDS is that this can also show up. You don't have to be underweight to experience REDS. Okay. You don't have to just, be a high level athlete either to experience REDS, right? This is really important when it comes to women's health. So let's dive in. So REDS in athletes and active women, firstly. So what the research consistently agrees on when it comes to REDS, and I'm just going to read off my notes because really there's so lot to this. Oh, sorry. My words are not coming out. There's a lot to cover. So, REDS happens when long term energy intake does not meet energy expenditure. Okay, so again, it's coming back to what you hear in the online space around energy in versus energy out. And it's a unit of measure at the end of the day. So it's not to say it's ineffective for men, it's not to say even that it's ineffective for women. Like, I'm sure most of us listening to this, or most of us sitting here learning about this, know that when we have been in a caloric deficit and we've been moving more, you definitely see results. But how sustainable is it? And do you know the implications that it's having on other parts of your physiology and your biology at the end of the day? So it affects far more systems than just the periods, by the way. So metabolism, thyroid function, immunity, mood, sleep, gut health, bone density, recovery, and also performance, which we're going to talk a little bit about. So, even slightly low energy availability over time can disrupt hormones, okay, especially in active women. So, you don't need to look, like I said, underweight to have REDS. It shows up across all body types. If you are under eating, you are not supporting your hormonal health. It's as simple as that. Just to encapsulate that in a nutshell for you. So, common signs: irregular cycles, given, low libido, persistent fatigue, injuries, anxiety, irritability, digestive issues, stalled progress in training. So it's almost as if like you've hit that peak performance and now like what is happening from there? Absolutely nothing. It's almost like a plateau. Uh, Feeling cold all of the time can also be a sign, and disrupted hunger cues. So it's like creating confusion about like, am I hungry? Am I full? I don't actually know what the fuck is going on. So clinically, a few clinical important points to add. So the menstrual cycle is one of the earliest, most sensitive indicators of underfueling. So if you are noticing irregular periods, missing period, potentially really light bleeding, and potentially for only like 1 to 2 days, right? Anything under 3 days, cause for concern. Anything over 7 days, cause for concern. Really taking note of like the color, like is it brown when it starts? Because that's really signifying some stagnation in the body as well. And like if we're overtraining, undereating, it's a freaking problem. Not to scare anybody, but just to make you very aware. So, returning to full energy availability often normalizes hormones and periods more quickly than previously believed. Okay, so returning to a real healthy caloric intake and versus energy expenditure as well is super helpful to re-regulating the hormones. Athletes often underestimate how much they need by about 300 to 600 kcals per day. So, especially in high training phases. So, that is massive. Like, that is actually massive in terms of energy when you're looking at those units of measure. So, moving on to energy intake across the menstrual cycle. Now, this is really freaking important. Okay. So, energy intake is highest during the luteal phase. Naturally, this is pre bleed. So, we're about to detox, be depleted. You know, we're coming into that rest and slow down phase of the cycle during luteal and menstruation. The increase during luteal in terms of caloric intake can range from 100 to 500 kcals per day. Again, this is going to be highly dependent on the individual, whether you are highly active, whether you're not. Like it just really depends on where you're at on that particular journey. This lines up with what we obviously know physiologically speaking. So progesterone is higher, which increases the metabolism at this time, only slightly, but it still increases. Body temperature also rises, so this will equate to more energy expenditure. And appetite tends to naturally increase. So again, coming back to the fuel analogy, naturally in luteal, your body's like, I need more fuel for various different reasons, right? I've got a lot to do hormonally. Are you going to support that, sis, or are you not, right? That's essentially what the body is calling forth. So coming back to that road trip analogy, this is luteal. So it's as if like you're going, Actually, no. My coach told me to stick to X amount of calories per day in order to reach my fat loss goal. Okay. And so, because you now have that core belief and you really truly believe that that's what is required for you in order to lose weight, you're going to stick to that. So, while the body in luteal is going, hey, babe, starving, need more fuel, your mind is going, no, because I've been told this thing and I have this goal. So, why would I listen to my body? Right? And again, it is that. It's you going 50 kilometers and then stopping at the fuel station to top up just a tinsy little bit and then go again. It's not freaking sustainable. It makes really no sense. Okay. Now, coming to the follicular phase, which is post menstruation, pre ovulation. Many women naturally eat less at this time. Hormones are lower and steadier. Women often feel lighter, sharper, and more in control of hunger cues. Now, key takeaway for that is some women experience big shifts in appetite when it comes to follicular, and others are stable or really at any point within the menstrual cycle. You like some may experience big shifts, others not so much. Hormone verified studies, the strongest ones, support that luteal eating should be higher. Matching intake to the cyclical phase can reduce PMS symptoms, cravings, binge episodes, guilty as charged over here with the binging episodes, mood swings, and also energy crashes. So, when we tend to the needs of each individual phase and understand that each individual phase of the cycle requires something completely different, right? That is when we are going to be able to reach our goals, but on a substantially sustainable level. Okay. Not just like a yo-yo dieting, yo-yo weight loss kind of vibe, but also holding space for the natural ebbs and flows of the body and the natural fluctuations as well. So moving on to the next point, what this means for fit and active women and athletes. So the biggest risk zone is high training load and low appetite in follicular phase, and dieting mentally in luteal phase, prime conditions for REDS over time. Okay. So ideal nutritional strategies based on the data, okay, that we have at the moment is eating more during the luteal phase, often 200 to 400 kcals per day more. Okay, so if you're in a calorie deficit, say from follicular to just post ovulation, it is definitely required for you to increase whatever that baseline intake is, even if you are in a deficit, plus 200 calories to 400 calories per day during luteal. Okay, very important to note. Do not suppress hunger in the luteal phase. It is physiological, not your lack of willpower. Prioritizing carbs during high volume training, especially if you train fasted in the morning, is also vital. Protect morning training with fueling to avoid deep energy deficits. Use the menstrual cycle changes as a guide for your energy availability as well. So the simplest protective rule when it comes to looking at RED specifically, because it is, essentially a deficiency, energy deficiency is what it is. If the cycle length suddenly changes, PMS worsens, or ovulation starts to become irregular, increase your overall fueling. That is fundamental. Okay. So if you start to notice shifts in your menstrual cycle at all whatsoever, this needs to be looked at, how you're fueling your body. And this goes for everyone, whether you're active or whether you're not. You may just be a really flippin' busy mom, okay, who eats her kids' leftover Vegemite toast in the morning. Babe, it's not enough. And I'll tell you how I know that, because that's what I used to do. I used to do that every single flippin' day, and I'd be 2 to 3 cups of coffee bloody deep right before 8 a.m. And naturally, caffeine is a suppressant, right? Appetite suppressant. So naturally, of course, I wouldn't want to eat. I wouldn't eat until now, 11 a.m. in the day. I tell you what started to happen. Clots in my menstrual blood. My hair fucking fell out in clumps. Okay, clumps. I was also heavily sleep deprived at this moment. So this became a very habitual shit cycle that I fell into of not eating, of not moving my body at all, actually, because I was so sleep deprived. I was just reliant on caffeine and I was not eating. But then the opposite started to happen. You'd think naturally not eating, you'll starve and you'll drop all this weight and you'll become skin and bone. No, not all of the time does that happen. A lot of the time, the body kicks into survival mode because it wants to protect protect the reproductive system. And so then the nervous system comes in and it's like, oh, Jesus Christ, we are so goddamn stressed. This bitch will not eat. All she drinks is fucking coffee. The adrenals are under so much pressure that affects the thyroid, blah, 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 all the way down to the friggin' ovaries. And the ovaries are like, no, you're cut off. We're done. We're fucking exhausted, actually, because you cannot support us. You cannot support reproduction. And then your bleed becomes, not a problem. It's not the bleed that's the problem. It's how you are serving yourself that is the problem. So with that example, okay, the bottom line is this. RED-S is extremely common in active women mostly, okay, but it can be common across the freaking board. If you're not eating, problem. Not eating enough, it's a problem. So you'll also probably begin to continue to hold weight because your nervous system is in survival mode. And it's like, well, we know that we need some fucking energy, store the fat, because we need something to produce what we can in terms of hormones in order for this bitch to fucking survive. Essentially, right? So it is extremely common in those women, dancers, women in sport, active women, who train really hard, teach classes, or do multiple modalities. And yes, I'm looking at you, the one that's listening, okay? Most women need more energy than they think during intense training blocks as well. Appetite and calorie needs naturally rise in the luteal phase. So just to come back to that, because I really need you to take note of that. And honoring that decreases the risk of RED-S significantly. Okay, supporting luteal phase metabolism can be one of the easiest ways to keep hormones balanced, cycles regular, and performance stable. So this is huge because coaches and fitness trainers are not taught this information. Okay, if I wasn't a freaking menstrual cycle coach or have been asking questions about my own body for so long and going like, something is fucking off here. Why does this happen? Why does this happen? Why do I feel this way? Why do my moods become so fucking unstable in the luteal phase? Oh, why can I not see clearly? Have I eaten today? Like having a trainer that is a male can be difficult because they don't fully understand the female experience and they never will. And we can't expect that of them either. However, it is my job to teach you, to educate you, but also to educate any trainers listening, any coaches listening that want to know more about how they can optimally train their female clients, their female athletes. Because I'm telling you, it is crazy how different it is to training men. It is insanely different. We're not only hormonal-led beings, we're emotional-led beings. We're going to have a lot of emotional height and sensitivity come up in luteal as well. So if you put yourself through a hard-ass workout, you probably end up crying in the fetal position, because it's just not what the body, it's not what's serving the body at that time. And if you're not eating enough, sucks ass because it's also not serving the body at that time. And long term, we're going to run into some health issues. Long term, we really, really will. You might be okay for a while in your peak performance days, but then you come out of that. Potentially you're wanting to fall pregnant. Potentially you're wanting to improve your overall health and well-being. Well, the reproductive system and the endocrine system are the things that are really going to struggle with that. So this is why I think these conversations are so important, need to be had more and more and more. More women need to come to terms with understanding that the rest is so important, despite what we've been taught and conditioned to do, how to behave, how to live our lives day to day. Even just a note on the simple 24-hour day cycle. naturally our cortisol, which is a stress hormone, serves its purpose, right? But if that is increasing, or you're having spikes at different times of the day, like that's going to throw you out as well. So naturally, what I could also recommend is training in the morning if you can help it before 10 or 11 a.m. Because naturally, cortisol levels will peak around that 10 a.m. mark. So when you're looking at the circadian rhythm and the 24-hour cycle within our cycle, you feel most energized, or at least it is likely that you feel more energized first thing in the morning. And if you don't, well, there's probably things to investigate there as well in terms of your health and well-being, potentially sleep quality. Do you breathe through your mouth when you sleep? Like, what's going on there? There's a lot of questions to be asked. However, if you can treat your 24-hour cycle exactly the same way that you treat your menstrual cycle, and understand that there's a peak in a 24-hour cycle, there's also a dip in a 24-hour cycle. So to me, it doesn't make sense to train at night because my cortisol's already peaked around that 10 a.m. and now I'm slowly coming into that rest and digest state of the evening, coming into sunset. And that's really when our circadian rhythm goes, yeah, it's time to wind down. So for me, that doesn't make sense personally to go and do a freaking workout at 6 p.m. when everything's starting to wind down, right? Because I don't want to peak my cortisol again. I don't want to put unnecessary stress on the body. And again, of course, it comes down to lifestyle shifts and patterns and all these things and what works for you. And I understand, look, many of us may start work at really early hours, so potentially our only opportunity to work out is in the afternoon. But if you can shift these things, I really recommend doing so. And it's not, again, like I just want to preface by saying none of this information is to make anybody feel wrong. It's simply awareness at the end of the day. You're going to do with this information what you will. And for some of you who are high-level athletes, it's like, I understand. You've got particular training regimes that you have to follow. I think on a deeper level for me as a menstrual cycle coach, and I really want to kind of infiltrate these spaces when it comes to women's sport, is to help these coaches or to help these establishments really understand you have to factor this in. If women are in sport, you need to factor these things in. And of course, if you're in team sport, like naturally, you're all not going to be synced at the same time. So it's going to be hard. Like there are certain ways that you can adapt and you can support the cycle. And you also got to understand that high-level athletes are conditioned to that way of being as well. So we just want to support that in the best way that we can, So let's talk about weight loss for women, because it's not just as simple as we've discussed this whole time as eating less and moving more. Yes, okay, that makes sense. It's effective, but is it sustainable? Because our main focus and goal is really longevity, vitality. It's not these quick, like, oh my God, I dropped 30 kilos and now I'm going to gain it all back. And, like it's not sustainable. It's like shifting any habit. And this is when it comes back to the menstrual cycle. This is what I tell my clients. There are so many things that contribute to an unhealthy cycle. There are so many things that can contribute to a healthy cycle. However, you can't implement them all at once. It's just not sustainable. I'm not going to go and get you to, chuck out everything in your house that has microplastics in it. I mean, you should do that, but I'm also not going to tell you to go and buy a whole bamboo filled wardrobe. Like these things happen over time. Every single cycle, you can make it your duty of care for yourself to choose one thing that you habitually want to focus on and change. Potentially you vape. Okay. Let's start with that. Potentially you're a drinker. Okay. Let's potentially start with that. Potentially you're under eating. Let's focus on that. You know what I mean? It's potentially you have insomnia, you get no sleep. Like there are so many contributing factors, but I don't want to overwhelm you in this podcast either. It's 11:11 on my clock, by the way. Make a wish. I just want you to have the awareness, but I would not expect ever a client of mine to just eradicate everything that is contributing to her menstrual cycle health, or potentially having a negative impact, so to speak, on her menstrual cycle. It's just not sustainable. So when I work with a client, we focus on one thing per cycle. Okay, maybe even one thing per couple of cycles, just because it may take time. It may take 2 to 3 cycles to really have that new habit, that new lifestyle change implemented. It's very often as well that we kind of go backwards before we go forwards again. Right? So something to keep in mind. Anyway, I'm coming back from that tangent. So when a woman is in a chronic deficit, her body's first response is not weight loss, which is kind of what I've touched on already, but I have clear, concise notes that I want to share with you. Her body's first response is to protect the reproductive system and lower the metabolic rate. Now, what this means, okay, if she underfuels too hard, metabolism is going to slow down, which you naturally would think by not eating, you're going to drop weight, starve yourself, or whatever the case may be, and you'll just be losing all this weight. Well, that's not how it works, unfortunately. Hunger hormones begin to dysregulate as well. Thyroid hormones also drop. Cortisol increases, which we've spoken about the peaks in the cortisol, the stress hormone. Ovulation then becomes delayed or absent, which then leads to potential missed bleed entirely. We can have anovulatory cycles. There may be cycles where you're not ovulating, but you still get a bleed, or you're not releasing an egg and you still bleed. But long term, that can lead to amenorrhea, which is missing bleed entirely. Okay, something to be really mindful of, because that can really coincide with undereating and overtraining as well. So PMS begins to worsen as well. Water retention actually increases. Cravings intensify more so, which can also lead to, again, those binge eating episodes and emotional eating, the relationship to the food as well for comfort. I just dropped my pen. That was like my little pointing stick for myself. And fat loss actually in turn becomes harder. So ironically, too aggressive deficit or aggressive dieting keeps the body stuck. There's also a key element here. When we look at the menstrual cycle, we're looking at the four pillar approach. Okay, so we look at nutrition, we look at physical aspects, we look at the emotional aspects, things that are emotional stresses and things like that in your life. We also look at the spiritual and energetic, right, which encapsulates the womb wisdom, and it also encapsulates like really how connected you are to the wisdom of your body and how in tune really you follow that wisdom. So there's also emotional elements when it comes to holding and storing weight in the body. Yes, there's biology. Yes, science shows. Okay. However, when we carry emotional burdens or we're carrying emotional stress, this can impact weight loss as well, which is also what a lot of fitness coaches do not touch on because they do not understand it. They do not know. Okay. And we can't, that's the thing. I'm not totally trying to call out the industry per se. I think it's just frustrating and I think it can be very dangerous. However, I feel like women do need more discernment when looking to a fitness coach or who they choose on their journey, and what kind of things this particular fitness coach or influencer is saying. Like, do your due diligence and go, how does that respond in my body? Like, if I hear this information, like, and I filter it through my body, what do I feel? Like, does that feel like truth for me? It's not to say it's not true, and there's not substantial evidence to prove that being in a calorie deficit will help you with weight loss. But also the same coaches are telling you to eat inflammatory type, unhealthy, gut-like supporting foods, even if it fits in your macros. You know what I mean? And I get it. That can also be helpful to breaking habits at a slower rate as well. Again, it's not about shaming, but it's about having the awareness, because a lot of the time there's more to it. So again, coming back from a tangent, I like to do that. Now, most overweight women are not struggling because they need a greater deficit. Okay, this can be incredibly dangerous and actually incredibly unhelpful if we continue to push a deficit on anyone, especially women. So the reason that they are struggling is because their metabolism, their hormones, and stress axis are completely flipping dysregulated. Years of dieting, potentially yo-yo dieting as well, which is really not helpful, stress and inconsistent fueling. Okay. Oftentimes I like to say less is more, but in this instance, it's not. The key is energy availability, not simply calories in versus calories out. So for women especially, and especially active women, you only burn fat effectively when your body feels safe. So energy availability, calories eaten, okay, calories burned in exercise slash kilograms fat-free mass, okay? So when availability drops too low, the body will compensate. So ovulation will start to slow down, progesterone drops, cortisol rises, abdominal fat storage increases, and this is what is known as cortisol belly. So if you were doing all the things, okay, you're in a calorie deficit, you're doing your 6 fucking HIIT sessions a week and you're still not losing weight, and you're like, what the fuck? Because that fitness influencer that has a trillion fucking followers told me all I needed to do was exercise more and eat fucking less. Well, guess what? Now your cortisol's spiking, your body is in survival, and it doesn't know when you're going to eat again. So it's like, well, we don't trust this chica. We don't trust her not to fuel us. So we're going to store that shit for a rainy day because we don't feel safe to actually use this fuel. And we only want to use this fuel when we really fucking need to. Does that make sense? So this is why I'm very passionate, and you can probably feel that coming through the mic, because I'm very passionate about it. It actually pisses me off that we don't have deeper conversations about this, that we are just telling women to be in a calorie deficit and we're not actually looking at how that's going to impact her long term when it comes to fertility, when it comes to her reproductive health, when it comes to her menstrual cycle. It drives me fucking insane. Also, naturally, the thyroid then decreases, which slows the metabolism. Insulin sensitivity actually worsens, and fat oxidation decreases. My bad. Fat oxidation decreases. So, to explain that, even if a woman is overweight, a big deficit can push her into a low energy state, which mimics that of REDS. Okay, which again is the energy deficiency in women in sport. It's relative. Okay. This is why many overweight women stop losing weight after an initial drop. They feel exhausted or have that prolonged feeling of fatigue because you've been pushing, and you're not following that cyclical rhythm. Again, it's just awareness. I've experienced this as well. You'll also experience irregular cycles. So that may look like having one really short cycle, then a really, really long cycle. And there's just inconsistency with them. Like no cycle is around the same mark. Okay. Binge eating or craving high caloric food. So you'll be more inclined to choose the calorie dense things like, potentially chocolate and ice cream and bag of chips and all these things, because you're essentially depriving yourself of the fuel that your body requires. So in depriving the fuel, and you're craving, like your blood sugar levels are going to shift. So you're craving those things to kind of pick that back up. Okay. And as well, something to note for the ADHD girlies out there, it's also the dopamine and the impulse and the things like that that come into play. And this will also cross over into PMDD, which I won't delve super deep into, but I can do another episode on that. That also can play a massive part when it comes to emotional eating and things like that when we explore the relationship to food, especially at different points of the cycle. So it's also likely that to get stuck in a plateau, which is essentially like you drop a bunch of weight and then nothing shifts. It's almost as if like you are experiencing peak performance, and then like you can't get pushed past a certain point, and you're like, what the hell? Like I'm training so freaking hard. I don't understand why I can't reach this next level, and that's why it's that constant push to essentially fatigue, absolute fatigue. And the body's just like, sis, I cannot give anything more. I've got so many processes that I'm trying to like protect your reproductive system. I'm trying to produce these hormones on a daily. I'm, doing all this shit on a subconscious level that we obviously do not think about on a daily basis about how things impact our body. So the energy availability, if it is too low for your particular physiology, even if your total body mass is high, like this is really going to impact you. So let's talk about how then we balance weight loss, the menstrual cycle, and avoiding REDS, hopefully, if we can. So we shift from that eat less, like really reframe that eating less, to strategic fueling based strictly on cycle physiology. Okay. So this would look like, let's start with the follicular phase. So this is pre-bleed, your most weight loss friendly window. And why is that? Because insulin sensitivity is the highest in the follicular phase. Strength and HIIT training feels easier, and I would recommend doing that in this phase. Metabolism slightly lower. Appetite is naturally lower as well. Cortisol regulation is far better in this phase, and carbs are much better tolerated as well. And please, with no misconceptions around the carbohydrates, okay? Hydrate is literally in the word. Carbohydrate. They hydrate. Okay. We require them. So please do not be scared of the carbs. Best phase for a moderate calorie deficit if you have been assigned one. Okay. Like this is the perfect time to kind of dip those calories back down. Not too much, however, within that 200 to 300 below maintenance. So if you have a trainer who's worked out, or you've got a nutritionist, for example, that has worked out your caloric intake based off maintenance, your maintenance calories, and then what kind of deficit you would need to be in, you'll be able to then, once you've worked out your maintenance, coming into the cycle, you'll be able to go, okay, I need to up them at this phase, and I can drop them by 200 to 300 calories in the follicular phase. So calories below maintenance for most women, like around that 200 to 300 range. If it's any more than that, like 500 to 1,000, like mainstream fucking dieting tells you, please avoid that if you can. Training focus, strength conditioning, HIIT, and longer workouts, so more endurance based, like if you want to run longer or whatever. Try in this phase though not to push too hard too soon. Okay, like we get excited sometimes. We kind of finish bleeding and we come out of menstruation and we're like, yes, I feel good. My energy is fucking high. Like, let's go. But don't go too hard too soon. Okay, take it within your stride and really feel the energy levels shifting. Phase 2, the ovulatory window. Well, I start phase 1 at menstruation, but I've just listed it this way. So the next phase I want to talk to you about is the ovulation phase. So this is not the best time to push a deficit aggressively. Okay, why? Why is that? Immune load increases, recovery needs to increase, and some women feel more hungry. Okay, and that's because your body's trying to do what? Reproduce. It is the window where your body's like, okay, we got to set up all of the things and take all of the energy to get this egg released, that hopefully this egg will meet sperm, and then we will start our journey from fallopian tube into the bloody uterus. Okay. So that's really what's happening here. So follicular is really the key if you want to be in a deficit or need to be in a deficit for weight loss. Follicular is it. Ovulation, yes, but not anything aggressive. Okay. Then we're looking at the luteal phase. So this is the key phase where women accidentally push themselves into RED's tendencies. Okay. What happens here? Appetite increases, progesterone rises, energy needs also increase. Metabolic rate increases by about 1 to 300 kcals, which is again what we were talking about, is where we need to increase that, not decrease that. Blood sugar becomes more sensitive, water retention rises naturally. So you'll also notice, don't focus on the scale weight. Not only does your uterus expand like 3 times its normal size pre-bleed, but you have water retention. You have other things that are contributing to this overall weight that you are carrying. It's not just fat. So don't freak out about that. Training often feels harder. You feel a little bit more sluggish at this time, and that's your body's natural calling to just tone it down, slow down. It's not a good time at all for a big calorie deficit. Again, with all of these guidelines, you know your body best. You're going to be able to feel what feels good for you in each phase of the cycle. This is just how to optimally support that. This is where most women sabotage their progress. They try to resist the hunger, restrict harder, burn out, fatigue, binge eat. Like it's just a vicious fucking cycle if not supported the luteal phase or any phase of the cycle for that matter optimally and properly. So instead, here's a little solution-based thing for you. There's ants all over my laptop. I don't know where they're coming from. Eat at maintenance or slightly above. Okay, so really get clear on like, what are my maintenance calories? What is my intake when I'm in a deficit during that follicular phase? Okay, training harder, so I'm, in that phase. And where can I increase and decrease and what feels good for me? It may only be 100 calories. It may be 300. Like, you need to gauge that because your body will communicate that with you. So getting really clear on that with the support of your trainer as well, or nutritionist, or whoever you have supporting you and your eating, your fueling, I should say. So increasing protein and complex carbs as well. Just think as well, anything that grows in the ground, so long as it's not sprayed too heavily, is pretty freaking good for you. So a focus on like earth foods, like grounding foods as well in this time. Protect your recovery. So recovery in this time is vital as well. Lots of massages, lots of like yoga if you can, like really bringing it down, reducing the hit, as I've said, including more restorative type movements. So it's not about completely eradicating movement altogether. I would highly recommend resting on days 1 to 2 of your bleed, just because they're the heaviest days. And yeah, I mean, you have rest days through your training anyway. I would highly recommend resting on those days. Your coordination as well might be a bit off. Brain is not computing. So really allow yourself to rest during that time. Same thing applies during menstruation. I would just apply what we apply to luteal phase in menstruation as well. Keep those calories increased. You're detoxing a lot. A lot of iron rich foods are really good. Keep it warm, earth grounding foods for the womb. And that's going to feel really supportive as well, long term. So instead of a constant deficit and staying in that, which causes metabolic suppression, which we do not fucking want, stick to deficit in follicular. 200 to 300 calories, great fat loss burning zone. We love that for us. You're increasing your intensity when working out. You're in a deficit. Chef's kiss, okay? In ovulation, you can be in a small deficit or maintenance. That's really up to you at the end of the day and how you feel in your body. And again, it could vary cycle to cycle. So keep that in mind as well. And as you sort of lose weight or you're on your fitness journey, you may notice different shifts as well. So just take note. This is why cycle tracking is really supportive and helpful within this. Luteal maintenance, and same with menstruation as well. Maintenance calories or a slight surplus, which is obviously increased caloric intake during these times. So this can be between 100 to 300 kcals per day to really protect from REDs and having that energy deficiency, and also prevents binge eating as well, because that is just throwing us off. And then we kind of, instead of going cyclically and kind of following those rhythms and those patterns, we end up in a worse off position if we're not following that, because we crave more shit, or we crave the binge eating more, or we are in these positions mentally, physically, and emotionally to want more and to go for the thing that we really shouldn't be having, versus supporting the caloric intake, supporting the kind of foods that we're eating, supporting the cycle and the hormone regulation and production, and therefore long term creating healthier habits, right? Which keeps us out of that REDS deficiency and also out of binge eating, because we don't feel good when we do it. And I know that for myself. So this pattern that we're following, this rhythm, this cyclical rhythm, if you will, prevents metabolic slowdown. It also protects ovulation, supports progesterone production. Love that. We really need that. That's a key hormone for us. Prevents REDS symptoms, stabilizes hunger, reduces binge eating or restriction cycles within the cycle, improves adherence, increases fat loss overall. Because the body says, I'm out of survival mode. I'm not in danger anymore, right? So I'm safe to actually let this energy go. Like, I don't need to store it for a rainy day. Now, you might be wondering, and I just want to answer this question ahead of time, but please, if you have any before I close out, definitely slide into my DMs over on Instagram. It's at Womb I'll put this in the description below for you as well. But if you have any questions, don't hesitate to slide into DMs. We can discuss this further, or I can put up a questions box and I can answer some of your questions in another episode, like whatever it is for you. But I just want to answer this one because I feel like this will be a frequently asked one. So it asks, can overweight women still lose weight using this approach? Yes, 100%. And if not, it will actually happen faster because it is more sustainable. So the metabolism stays higher following this kind of approach. Ovulation stays consistent, which is beautiful. Healthy cycle that's supporting. Thyroid function stays stable. Cortisol remains regulated. Inflammation decreases. Appetite is more predictable, which we love. Training output is better. Lean muscle mass is protected. And that's really the key, right? Is to increase that lean muscle mass. The more fat's going to burn, especially in a rest and digest state of being. And a woman with more body fat still needs proper fueling at the end of the day. Even if fat loss is your goal, you still need to fuel your body correctly. And if anything, that's going to support it. That's going to 100% support it. Because again, it's keeping the body out of survival, okay? Which the body is likely already in if we are overweight or underweight anyway. You're in a stress response. Like the body's main goal is to protect the reproductive system, sorry. So you still need proper fueling to lose fat without suppressing your hormones. Restricting harder does not work for women long term. Cyclical fueling does. Cyclical training does. So when women follow this particular fueling rhythm with their cycle, PMS cycle signs will decrease. Binge eating, again, we've spoken about, reduces significantly. Cravings decrease, blood sugar stabilizes, cycle becomes more regular. They lose fat more consistently, feel more energized, and training overall improves. Most importantly, within all of this, we stop fighting our fucking biology. We stop fighting against what our body is calling for because that particular fitness influencer online told you just need to eat less and move more, right? So with all of that being said, first of all, thank you for tuning in. I really wanted to bring this to light because I think it is super important for us to understand, to make note of, to give our bodies not only the correct fuel, I am so sweaty, but fuel in ways that support the menstrual cycle. The menstrual cycle is the fifth vital sign for health. And the menstrual cycle is going to tell you and share with you, depending on what signs you experience, it's going to tell you a lot about your overall health and well-being. It's going to tell you a lot about whether you're fueling it correctly. It's going to tell you a lot with how healthy it actually is. So if you are somebody that experiences little to no bleeding, you're missing a period, you're intense pain leading up to your bleed, or you have intense PMS, or you're super irritable, the moods are just uncontrollable, your bleeding's potentially even really heavy, okay, the color of your blood, like I've said earlier, all of these things are common. They are not normal. And these really indicate whether or not the cycle is healthy and how your body and your hormones ultimately are coping with stress. And that's really what it comes down to, is there are many forms of stress, just to finish this conversation, because we're almost at an hour. So I love that if you're still here listening, like how good. But these are all contributing factors. But we need fuel in order to survive. Okay. It's like your car will not get far if you are trying to drive that thing on empty. Your body is the same. And it is also not beneficial, as I've already used with the analogy, in just topping up in little increments. And, it's going to take you far longer to get to your destination. And that's essentially the key of what I'm trying to say. Yes, your goal may be fat loss, if that's what it is. Yes, you may be a high-level athlete who's trying to improve their overall performance, okay? But you are going to be far less, further away from your goals in fat loss, in weight loss, in performance, if you ignore your cyclical rhythm. If you continue to fight against it based off conditioning, based off what a coach is telling you based off potentially them not having all of the information either. Okay. So this is really what this podcast is about, what my education is about, what me helping women and working with women and their cycles is about, is to help you become really independent of that. Is to really help you have that high level of body literacy and advocacy for yourself to go, hey, actually, that doesn't feel right for me because I'm a cyclical being. And so let me educate you because I'm now deeply educated. That's the point of where I want everyone, every beautiful woman that I work with to get to go, hey, I know enough about my body now. I am so deeply in tune with her rhythm that I know how to train. I know how to fuel her. I know that when I don't eat this, I'm like a crazy person, like a week before my bleed, you know? I'm really irritable. I feel this. I experience clotting. I experience all these things when I actually do bleed. I'm missing a period entirely. Like, again, I'm repeating myself, but I just want to be really clear that those are the things that the body is trying to signal to you. So I hope this was really insightful. I just want to keep talking about it, but I'm also like, let's cap this at an hour. We could have made a 2-part bloody series. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast. I really do intend to drop more episodes, especially educational pieces around this, potentially interview people in the future about, various different topics to do with the cycle, to do with the health of our brains, of our guts, of everything that contributes to the human body, the nervous system. But in the meantime, I hope that this has been really helpful. I hope that you have learned something incredibly new, because I knew when I discovered this, I was like, oh, of course, there's something else that we haven't been taught, right? But don't let it overwhelm you. Take it within your stride and really just like one little piece at a time. One little piece at a time. I know it can feel like it's a lot. I know it can feel aggravating and frustrating at times when you think like, oh my God, if only I knew this back then, or if only I knew that then. But we can only do what we can do, and we only know what we know. So knowledge is power, in my opinion, but it also doesn't mean anything until it is in the body and it is implemented into our daily lives, and we're shifting our lifestyles in accordance to come home to the menstrual cycle. Now, before I close out, I would like to mention that coming early 2026, I do have a app that I'm currently building out that is to do with cyclical workouts, with other resources and things that we have discussed within this episode will be in the app. You can follow these workouts in accordance with your menstrual cycle. There'll be different resources in terms of how to eat in alignment with and how to fuel nutrition wise in alignment with your menstrual cycle, as well as the emotional elements as well. There'll be breath work and nervous system regulation practices within that app. So please follow the podcast, subscribe to the podcast, or at Womb Imprints is my Instagram for further updates on that. And if you would like to dive deeper into your cyclical wisdom and your cyclical health and really understand the fundamentals of how you can support that, I have a self-paced course, which I will also put down in the description below, for you to access and look at and see if it's for you. There's about 13 audio teachings within that, and we kind of break down the 4 phases of the cycle. We look at the endocrine system, we look at the emotional aspects as well. And these are all very basic things when it comes to essentially tapping into your cyclical rhythm and coming home to that. Like it's a base. It's really giving you that base education, and then where you go from there is entirely up to you. If you would like to journey deeper, I also offer one-on-one coaching, and that's like a space where we really just decode all of your personal individual cycle signs that you're experiencing and bring everything back into a harmonious balance over time. So with all that being said, I'll pop all that information down below. Definitely come over and follow my socials. I'll put my TikTok below as well. I can't remember what my @ is. I should probably know that, but I can't. But I'll put it all below. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Please make sure that if this has resonated with you, or you know women that would absolutely benefit from hearing this education and this information, please do pass it on. That would mean the absolute world to me. And I really, really appreciate you sharing this with other women who can benefit from connecting with their menstrual cycle. And I honestly believe that we have a long way to go, but I'm excited for where we are at right now. So yeah, I'm going to leave it there. Big, big love. And thanks again for tuning in. See you in the next step. Bye.